Hey everyone, so upon request, I'm Spring the Fiber Enthusiast, and I was asked by many of you if I would show the completion of this poncho, as the progress of it to completion. So I only have a little bit left to do back here as we ended the last live. So I want to get this off my loom. I have so many things that I need to get busy doing, and the loom is in the way when it's up like this for long periods of time, and I get too much going on. So I need to decrease the amount of narrowing that's happening in this room and get this loom put back down so that way I can move around in here. But since it was requested that I finish it up with you all, that's what I'm going to do here. Probably what I'm going to do is do a more of like a time lapse in certain areas, just showing the process, and then time lapse it and kind of speed things up, and not stand here and talk your ears off. And that way you can just kind of watch the process. So I left off with needing to finish this, and I loaded my shuttle since then, and I'm just going to get busy and work this up. For those of you that are just joining in, I am working on a poncho that is for my very, very best friend, Rachel. She is also a fantastic supporter of the channel and comes to my live streams as well as hangs out with me here at the house sometimes. But she requested that I make her a poncho. And in talking with her about it, we decided that crochet was going to be too heavy. Knitting was going to be really more than she wanted as well. And I showed her a picture of a poncho that I had made in camouflage, Red Heart camo. And she said, I love it, but I want it to be warmer because she gets pretty cold pretty easily. And I talked to her about it a little bit, and we decided she was going to buy some fleece material, and I would line the poncho with the fleece material. So I warped this loom, this is a 32-inch chrome ski rigid heddle loom. I warped this loom with a 17-foot warp, which means my piece of fabric that I have here is 17 foot long. And minus the ends that can't get woven, roughly about a foot on each side type thing. That is considered my scrap yarn, and the rest of it will be poncho. And I've got a seam allowance added in there and all kinds of stuff. But I'm going to go ahead and continue the weaving process on this, and I'm going to time lapse you forward. Then I will bring you back when I cut it off the back beam into regular motion, and I'll talk about it as I'm cutting it off. So let's get busy. So now is the most rewarding and satisfying part of the whole entire process, and that's cutting it off the loom. There's just something about actually cutting it off that feels just amazing. So I'm going to do that with y'all. It's not going to be the same satisfaction for y'all as it is for me, but I am going to go ahead and cut away from my shuttle and set it out of the way. And here we go. So I'm going to cut towards y'all. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Look at all this. When we talk about waste yarn, that's what we're talking about. Scrap yarn that you weave in at the beginning and end, as well as all of this leftover waste yarn here. Now it can, I mean, you could use this for other things, but so the next fun part is to take it off this bar. I mean, we got it off that one, so let's take it off the other one. All right, here we go. And like that, we have the fabric off. I'm gonna roll this up just a hair. Well, I was going to. Helps if I roll it the right way. And then what I'm gonna do is just pull out my front apron bar. Put it up. And see where I'm attached and cut loose from where I'm attached. And I'm going to pull my cardboard out. I use that to start instead of putting a bunch of waste yarn in there. And now I have all of this fabric to fold in half. Fold it in half. I'm going to fold it in half again and just kind of fold it up and keep it nice and neat. So that way things don't come unraveled. Why? Clean up my room. So I'm going to clean all of this mess up, get everything situated, and then that way I can come back to you to sew this and the fleece together, as well as putting the two panels together. So we'll sew that together after a little bit. But as of for right now, we're off the loom. I'm going to clean up my mess and then I'll be back. Okay, so the next step in my process is I already have it folded in half. And I'm just going to move the excess out of the way. And what I'm going to do here is just cut off all these little tails right here. So I'm going to fold the top one back and pull all these strands of yarn down towards me here. And I may use a pair of scissors. It's been a long time since I used my rotary tools, so it may be a little on the dull side. We'll see. But I'm just going to cut them off. There we go. All right. A lot of times there's really no rhyme or reason to what I'm doing. I'm not a seamstress. However, I have been sewing for quite a long time. I've made several quilts, but yeah, I'm not a seamstress. I do a lot of working with putting my husband's new ranks on his uniforms, things like that. But as a general rule of thumb, I'm just not a seamstress. So the next thing I do, I've got this one done. Before I go any further, I do not want that to unravel. So what I have here is just some double-sided clear adhesive tape. Nothing special, just it's for fabric. So all I do is run a strip across where all of the ends are here, just to kind of hold everything in place. And then I fold it over onto itself because it is double-sided. So basically I'm using the tape to do the first part of the hem. So I'm just gonna place it down on top of all of these strands. Give it a little push as I go so I get both the layers as best as possible. I use this tape a lot when it comes to doing the ends of stuff like this, just simply because it does help. I don't have a serger, and a serger would be an amazing investment for doing this if I did this more. However, I don't do a lot of weaving anymore. Probably would do more if I actually if I actually did have a serger. Let's see. This is always the fun part for me, is to separate the, there we go, the strip from the adhesive there. All right, now I'm just gonna gently roll it over onto itself here. Creating that first roll for a hem. Some of the strands are missing the tape, but it's okay. They're not going to completely unravel before I get to the next step. All right. All right, so this side is as good as it's going to get for the moment. Sorry about that. I forgot to mute my phone. All right, so now I can do the opposite one. So I'm just going to turn everything around the opposite direction here. Bring that side over and do the same thing. takes care of that part. Now my next step will be to once again have it in half and make a center cut. And cut down the center here, and then do the exact same thing I just did. So what that's going to do is give me two separate panels. I can then hem real quick like over the end of it, just so that way everything stays in place, and I can start putting the two pieces together. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this, tape it, and then move on to the next step. The next time you see this, it will be in two separate panels, and there will be a sewing machine here. So we're going to go ahead and do that off camera. So I'm back. I kind of moved a little bit here. I'm going to adjust the camera some. And I'm all set up. I've got the thread on the bobbin to match the same up here. Everything's the same. I'm just going to go through and just do a simple stitch on it in order to kind of lock everything down. Nothing spectacular here. In fact, I think I'm just gonna go with what it's on and just kind of all right. And now what I do, and this is from sewing squares together a lot for quilts, pieces together for quilts. I don't take the first side off before I start the second side. And that's just a personal preference, I think. So I go ahead and start it and back stitch a little bit. And that way what happens is this gives me something to help pull that through, because otherwise, as you've seen, I was fighting it a little bit. I'm sure those of you that sew have been for years probably have better ways of doing things. As I said before, I'm not a seamstress. This is just how I do it and how I've done it. All right, so once again, what I'm going to be doing is pulling over the second panel, doing the exact same thing. I'm just going to add it in right behind this one, and then I'll cut all of this separation of parts where I've run them through back to back. So I'm going to go ahead and do the second panel, and then I'll be back. All right, so I have my two panels. They are hemmed. They are folded in half lengthwise. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move the one over a little bit, and I've got a pretty good strand of yarn, and I've got a long doll needle. Doesn't have to be that. You can absolutely use your darning needle. So what I've got here is, move those needles out of the way. So I've got it folded in half, and I'm just going to put some pins at the top just to hold the halfway mark. So let's see here. Nothing special. I'm just going to add a few pins only because I want to keep it in half. So what I'm going to be doing is leaving a space, an opening for the neck hole. So I need to make sure that I pin this so that way I know it stays in half and I can stop in time to leave some space for the neck hole. And everything will stay in half here, or at least close to it. That's the goal. All right, so that's the first one. I just put a row of pins and it's good. I'm going to do the same thing to the other side, and I'm going to have it marked around the same area on the other side for the neck hole. So let me flip that over and make sure it's in half. Sorry about my squeaky floor, y'all. All right, so I'm just gonna, again, run some pins to make sure that it stays in half. All right, now I want to get one about the same spot on the opposite side. Just so I know that's my stopping point. Right there. All right, so now I have my pins in place to help keep it in half. And now I can get prepared to sew a strip of yarn up through the center. open this up and this one up. All right. So get my piece of yarn here, find the end of it. I just took some of the leftover from my shuttle from when I finished weaving. The only reason I'm using the doll needle is because they do have a large eye for the most part, and it's easier to put the yarn in, and it's a little bit longer of a needle. Now, this is a little bit tedious, but what I'm doing is you can see the loops on the side here that was created with every pass. So what I'm going to be doing is going through this side, catching the other side, coming back to the next one, and just weaving my way through. So I'll try to do this up here where you can see. Get my threads out of the way here. And I'm going to start above my hemline, just simply so that way I don't pull anything that might still be loose. So I'm going to pull that one and try to make it as even as possible and catch the opposite side. So kind of like you would be slip stitching or single crocheting, mainly slip stitching, back and forth to put two ends of your project together. So that's what I'm going to be doing, and there you see we are together. And I just back and forth, catch the loop on this side, and then reach over and catch the next loop on the opposite side. And once again, I have a notification. That was an important one. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and continue working this up all the way to my neck hole. At that point, I will leave a long strand and turn it over and do the opposite side. I'll meet back up with you when I get to the neck hole. All right, so here we are. I've got the neck hole opening. I've left one long strand on each side, top and bottom. Here's the bottom ones. And that is so that way I can adjust it as I need to. If I need to close it up, I can. If I need to open it up a little bit more, I can. All right, so the next step is to switch you all around and move my table back so we can play with the fleece. Now, adding the fleece backing to this is going to be a little bit new to me because I didn't do that to the previous poncho. So let me get you all switched around and we will talk about it. All right, so I have the fleece here, and what I'm going to do is just go ahead and open it up at one end and see where it is as far as width compared to my poncho here. Let's see. So if I go from one side and work to here, pick up this one and work all the way over to the other side. I have plenty of fabric. I've got a good seam allowance to actually go over the edge here. So what I think I might do is just go ahead and open it up with the inside. Let's see, because this is going on the inside. I'm sorry, y'all. This dinging is annoying. This is what I deal with if I don't mute my phone. Anyway. All right. So I think that's what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this fabric on top and start pinning the fabric, the fleece fabric, to the woven flat fabric, and just pin it down, leave myself a good seam allowance to actually come up and cover the whole edge. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to figure it out as far as how long it is and all of that, and try to center it as best as possible, and then pin the two together. Then what I'll do is I'll go from here and go straight to sewing it on the sewing machine. And in doing so, I'm just going to sew around the outside to start with, the outside border to start with, and make sure everything is just so before I cut the neck hole open. And this being fleece, it's not going to be that big of a deal to just sew around the neck hole, and the fleece is going to be just fine. It's not going to need to be hemmed. The only thing I'm going to do is actually, I may run a collar around it. I don't know yet. We'll see how much I have left over. But as far as, you know, you were wondering how I was going to do this, what I was going to do, how I turn it from that fabric into a poncho, that's how I get it to this point. But I'm going to work on this off camera. It's not anything spectacular. As I said, I'm just going to match up fabrics with a seam allowance, so that way I can actually create a folded over seam around the outside and fold this gray over the top of that seam that I, you know, the hem that I created earlier. And that's all I'm going to do for this part. Now, when I get it all sewn around the edge, I'll bring you back and we'll take a look at it. Here it is. All I have left to do is I'm going to sew around the collar, and I may add a little fleece to the collar. I'm not so sure yet, that neck hole area. And I have finished lining it with the fleece, completely sewing it together. And yeah, so here it is. I'll insert a couple of pictures with it on prior to me doing the neck hole here. I'm also going to finish sewing up the top here. And basically what I'm going to do is just go around and around and around and around the same spot in order to give it some structure, added structure, both on the front and the back. The back is exactly the same as the front. Remember, it is 2 panels just put together, sewn up, laced up together with the same yarn to the neck hole, opening for the neck hole, and then back down the other side. So that is it, folks. And it's a wrap. Actually, no, it's a poncho. All right. Thank y'all for your interest in how I was going to do that. I do have some little bit of cleaning up on it that I want to do, but for the most part, it is complete. You see how I did it, and yeah, thanks so much for watching. I appreciate any comments or questions down below. And of course, I always appreciate the reaction of a thumbs up. Thank you so much. All right, everyone, be blessed, be a blessing. And until next time, bye for now.